So, hi Vinnie, thanks for having me on your recording here. My name is Zinow, in charge of product management for SAP's mid-market solutions. Which these are, I will talk about in a minute. My background, 30 years with SAP, so if you have any remaining questions on our mainframe product R2 or R3, I'm the right guy to ask, but today my focus would rather be...
Rainer, you never age.
Of course.
So,
like you.
But you're very kind.
Good. Yeah, what I will present obviously is the current state of planning, and I don't intend to change any slides anytime soon, but you never know. Therefore, my friends from corporate legal want me to not only say that I have this slide, but also to talk about it, which I've done. So let's start looking at the enterprise resource planning market. This is the market that I decided many years ago to specialize in, and my perspective is the entirety of the market. So I look at it from the bottom to the top. I myself grew up more in the large enterprise space, and but that's already 18 years ago that I then joined the mid-market part. So today I will talk primarily about the lower part of the pyramid. So if we start at the bottom, these are small companies who join the SAP world. And whether we now believe it or not, there is still a strong preference also for on-premise deployment models. This is changing over time, but there is no one size fits all. That is basically the key message of this slide. Why is there no one size fits all? Because you run into very different companies with very different capabilities, buying preferences. And at the bottom of the pyramid, I typically find companies who buy an SAP solution via a partner. It is typically, or pretty often, their first ERP solution that they ever get their hands on, and the journey starts here. This market has, I would say, a sweet spot in the range of, let's say, 10 to 20 users. When you grow beyond that space, we are talking about the beginning of the public cloud space here. The public cloud space is something that when we both met 10 years ago or so didn't yet exist. We had the discussion back then. On-demand solutions were on the rise, and that materialized big time. And I'm really happy that both of us can claim that we were right, that we said, no, this thing will not go away. It will stay. Today, public cloud ERP is a mainstream topic. We see, and I indicate that here with the 3 blue arrows, we see that this market segment is actually growing. It is growing both down and it is also growing up.
And I think the pandemic, work from home certainly helped that, because the on-premise provisioning of remote access and all that turned out to be a little more complex than people thought. So.
Yeah, no, and I saw that when I talked to customers, for example, from India, who said, hey, the lockdown really meant lockdown of our business. We were not able to do anything. Therefore, yes, this is the big push. That is the arrow down. But we also see the arrow up. In the segment above, we have the private cloud segment. The private cloud segment is basically, I always compare it a little bit. If the public cloud model is basically taking the bus to get from A to B, then the private cloud is the limo. You can decide when to start, when to stop. In the public cloud bus, there are certain ground rules that you need to know before you get on that bus. Obviously, the public cloud solution typically comes at a lower price tag. And then,
so just to clarify, what you call the public cloud is your data center, not the hyperscalers? Maybe
I'm not picky about whether it's now my data center or not. In today's world, you're right. It is my data center, so it is the SAP data center infrastructure that we run on a worldwide base. But we are just running a very large program in SAP to enable basically all of our solutions to run on any hyperscaler. Infrastructure as a service in today's world is a commodity. It is not a differentiating factor, and it is something which I welcome a lot, because there's so much discussion going on at the moment about data locality, especially in certain industries. Public sector, it was always a topic, and you have countries like China, where if you can't run the tenant, so the logical container where you have the customer data in, if you can't run that in mainland China, for many business, you're out of business. Therefore, hyperscalers is definitely the way to go. SAP has the so-called 4+1 strategy. So we are working with Google, Amazon, Microsoft for China. We then have Ali, respectively Tencent. Plus, SAP also will always have its own cloud offering for those customers who say, for whatever reason, I rather want SAP to take care of my data. And then just to complete this picture, on the left side, going up to the very top, we have the large enterprise segment with still a strong preference for an on-premise deployment. Pretty often these companies have large data center facilities, have large IT organizations, and they can make a case where running such a solution with their own resources looks more attractive commercially than getting it operated by a hyperscaler. So it's an economies of scale game. And as we are talking about three very distinct segments, we have at SAP three solutions. So for the bottom of the pyramid, we have our SAP Business One. For the public cloud market, we have SAP Business ByDesign. And then we have our flagship product, S/4HANA, in all of its different flavors. You can have S/4HANA in a public cloud setting, you can have it in a private cloud setting, and you can have it in an on-premise setting. And that is something which many of my larger customers really appreciate, because they say, look, we may need pick life sciences. Very strict regulations on how to handle upgrades, how to handle custom extensions and other things. And they have a preference for a private cloud setting, because they have more control over the calendar when they move from one feature pack to the next. Whereby in the public cloud world, these companies want to consume an enterprise resource planning solution, basically like they consume electric power or water. So that is why we have three solutions in the market, because we meet different categories of companies, and that is the way how the world looks like. If I give you a quick rundown of the three solutions, because not everybody is familiar with them, SAP Business One, actually, we sold it to 70,000 companies to date. I have a run rate of about 1,000 net new names per quarter. So 4,000 net new names to the SAP family every year. And if I said it's an on-premise solution, my partners are offering this also as a cloud. I would rather describe it as a cloudified solution. You know, from our discussions from the past, I'm pretty religious about cloud. And I always have my long list of criteria, but especially since I also have responsibility for Business One, I talked to quite a few customers and said, what is cloud for you? When do you believe that you have a cloud solution? And they say, simple answer, the box is not under my desk, / I'm not in charge of it. The second thing is I can operate the whole thing via the browser from wherever I want. And the third thing is I pay subscription instead of perpetual license. Then obviously you and I would have a long list of additional things like SaaS qualities and other stuff, but this really doesn't matter that much to my customers.
Right.
So they are very happy with business.
Us analysts get all upset about multi-tenancy and so on. Quite often the customer is not very excited about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited about multi-tenancy, but I'm equally clear to say multi-tenancy is only a topic for the provider, because it's my instrument of choice to get the maximum economies of scale out of the business. It is completely irrelevant for the customers who's actually using it. Yeah, other highlights of Business One, two things: 50 country localized.
Right, 70,000, and you've been there 18 years. You probably know every one of these 70,000 customers.
Well, in the Business One world, for sure not, but I would claim that I know the vast majority of the partners. And Business One is strictly a partner business for SAP. And the best thing about Business One is our partners took it into each and every micro vertical. I can't even think of a micro vertical where there is not a specialized Business One partner who is offering something for the vegetable industry or chicken farms, or I've seen nearly everything. And they take Business One as a kernel, and then they build onto it. The underlying architecture is a Microsoft.NET architecture, so nearly everybody knows that architecture. Nearly everybody knows the extension and capabilities of a .NET architecture. Frameworks are available more than enough. So that's the strength of Business One.
Rainer, what would you say your top 4 or 5 verticals are in Business One?
Sorry?
Or is it very fragmented?
Sorry, what the top 4 or 5?
4 or 5 verticals.
The top verticals are the typical suspects. Wholesale is very much up. To a little lesser degree, professional service providers. They are already further down in the cycle. Discrete manufacturing, retail is a big sector. And then you get the very long list, starting with many implementations in high tech. We actually got Business One through an acquisition. You may remember the name, the Agassi family from Israel.
Yep.
Shai Agassi and his father Reuven. So we got that via that connection. And in Israel, when we acquired it, or it was already heavily used in the high-tech sector, in the agriculture, and yeah, the partners built from there. So that's Business One, used all around the world, also by large SAP customers as a subsidiary solution. So I know many super large SAP customers who've basically plastered all of Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia with Business One instances, providing data into the bigger SAP solutions.
You know, Rainer, 2-tier ERP, we've talked about it for a long time. It seems like vendors don't talk much about it, but you know, you must have thousands of them. It just doesn't come out much.
Yes, and it is. I also know a couple of large customers who don't disclose their 2-tier strategy.
Okay.
But I can also tell you that I have a lot of conversations with very large companies, specifically from the US, who say, you know what, we've given up. At the rate that we are acquiring and divesting, we basically get a new ERP every month. So I would guess that the topic will come back big time, because the more we see the regulation on financial standards, IFRS 15, IFRS 16, where companies are responsible to ensure legal compliance from the largest entity to the smallest, even to minority shareholdings. where I see that companies will be forced to disclose their carbon footprint for carbon footprint taxation. This topic of two-tier, and you're right, it's one of my favorite topics, will be a big one, because the cost of having a completely heterogeneous landscape is really high.
And some of your competitors have multiple products, but they're not really linked, right? So they can talk two-tier, but they really haven't put investments in connectivity.
Well, I can tell you that I put a hell of a lot of money, both for B1 and ByDesign and S4HANA, into this topic, because it is something that larger customers want to see, because they don't want to pay the price of the heterogeneous landscape.
Well, I'm glad you're mentioning it, and you probably should talk about it more. I don't think your field talks about it enough.
Well, we both know that it's not the most simplistic topic. It's a lot simpler to say, hey, dear customer, you buy big SAP and you roll it out to everybody. I pitched exactly that story to a large pharmaceutical company from Germany. And the CFO said, Rainer, in principle, I'm all with you, but you know what? I have 38 divisions in Africa and they hardly break even. And I'm not willing to pay for the implementation. So either you have something at a decent price point a solution for which I can find personnel in these countries. So it's a lot more than just technology. It is also, one customer asked me a while ago, Rainer, when have you last time hired a person in the Philippines who can enter an order in an SAP system? I said, not recently. And he said, you would find it difficult because the people who can do it call themselves consultants, then they are too expensive. So we need a solution where we can basically take somebody from university or high school, show them the solution, and the person needs to be up and running in a week.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about any details on this slide. It simply says B1 is a suite in a box, end-to-end capabilities, everything that you would expect. But this is just 20% of the scope. The other 80% come from the partners. So whenever somebody asks me, what is the secret sauce of Business One? Why is this thing so successful? It's all about the partners, nothing else.
I'm glad you're highlighting that because, that's something, certainly Great Plains had a great model for that, but a lot of other vendors haven't been as successful with the partner model, verticalizing and so on. So,
yeah. Well, lucky me that not everybody has gotten it yet. Yeah, and maybe one more thing, and that's the good thing being part of big SAP. You can get your hands around a lot of technology. And Vinnie, you remember Vishal Sikka and his Fiori layout. This is the latest version of the Business One user interface running in the browser. And if I would now show you an S4 screen or a ByDesign screen, we probably would find the differences, and you could say, this is rather the B1, that's the S4 system, that's the ByDesign system. But we are all using the same Fiori UI, the same look and feel. So also when companies transition from B1 to a larger solution because they enjoy a fantastic growth rate, for the user, the system first and foremost looks similar. And that is something which is very important for us to provide the end-to-end user experience.
Are you seeing, in terms of the user interface, are you seeing demand for more voice?
Well, that's the other thing that I'm preaching for years and nobody is listening. So voice has not taken off. Yes, there are some specialized scenarios, specifically in a warehouse environment, hands-free scenarios, but that people now would say, hey, Siri, create an order, add the following line items, and so on and so on. I demoed that, I think, 2018 to you. And we were both very excited, but the rest of the world decided once again to ignore me.
How about, I noticed you had services. Service is one of your pillars.
Yes.
Are you seeing interest in augmented reality, stuff like that? Or is it still too early?
It is still too early, but so language processing will come first in the form of the bots, the chatbots. That is something which is really just around the corner. And with the amazing progress that we are seeing in the field of natural language processing, that will be one of the next big things. The other thing you talked about, augmented reality. I'm having lots of sessions with my friends from Microsoft. I'm always asking them, hey, what's the next big thing? And augmented reality as a part of Teams will be a big topic. And I, for example, we enable Business One and Business ByDesign so that we can propagate content into Teams. You don't need to leave Teams. You don't need to replicate data from Business One to Teams, but you can publish these tiles with the underlying information into a Teams environment. So augmented reality is something where I look more at Google and Microsoft to provide the infrastructure and the underlying technologies. But trust me, I'm monitoring that market and what is possible there every single day.
Rainer, you're always ahead of the market. What is the customer? What is a customer request level? Still early? Not enough?
That's strange. So when I talk to so my mid-market customers, whether it's in the small segment or the M segment, they want to know that we have these topics on our radar screen and under control. They ask me all these things, like we are discussing it now. Hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? When I then ask half a year later after they went live, well, now show me how you use supplier invoice recognition via the machine learning algorithm and so on and so on. They say, hey, we asked you to check whether you have it. We did not commit to you that we will use it on day one.
Don't force me to use it till I'm ready.
Well, and some people find some of the AI stuff scary. I'm super proud of our capability that I can predict for a certain approval that based on your historic data or your company's decisions, you will most likely approve the shopping cart. I think this is great. My only request to development was give me a button where I can say every approval with a likelihood more than 80%, approve it. Just show me the final list that I can glance over it and I'm done. I like it. Other people don't like it that much. So it is something with a younger generation coming into the organizations, the true digital natives who grew up with all of these things. They have a totally different perspective. If you would tell them, here's a supplier invoice, now enter it manually, they would say, man, you're joking. They would pick up their phone, take a picture, press a button, and expect that the invoice is now posted, not only as an attachment, but posted in the system. Good. ByDesign, our mid-market solution, public cloud, true native, meets all of the criteria regarding SaaS, multi-tenancy, whatever we discussed. Again, an end-to-end suite. And one day I asked one of our large partners, I said, when do you position ByDesign and when do you position Business One? And the partner said, look, it's pretty simple. As soon as the customer starts talking about multi-ledger, multi-taxation, multi-currency, multi-language, and intercompany businesses. That is the point when I start positioning predominantly by design. If it's rather, hey, I'm doing my business.
Not size of company, not size.
It is size is one criteria, but it sometimes it's a bit misleading. So I rather go by, and that is shown here on the second page. The unique thing about ByDesign is that it has currently 38 modeled end-to-end business processes in it. You remember Peter Zenke and Henning Kagermann. That is, and that is what, when I ask companies, okay, now the ink is dry under the contract, honestly, why did you buy our solution? Was it the amazing technology? Was it this? Was it that? I heard pretty often, well, we wanted the book. I say, which book? I can't remember that I delivered any books to you. And I said, well, the book with all of the processes that you collected for the last 50 years from all of the large enterprises. And that's the difference in the discussion. When I meet my traditional large enterprise customers, then the typical conversation is, Rainer, sit down, shut up, take notes, what we need. When I talk to one of my typical customers, and I would say, well, how do you want to do order processing? They look at me and say, hey, you're supposed to be the genius. You tell us what is the best way to run an order to cash scenario. That's why we buy your solution. So these pictures here, that is the single greatest asset of ByDesign. This is intentionally a non-technical environment.
Rainer, you say that a lot of ECC customers still remember the big posters. Remember?
Yes.
I mean, they keep saying one of the things they're missing as S4 is they don't have the process posters. So I'm glad you're doing this with BYD.
Well, and we always also had it for ECC. I obviously need to refresh the memory of some of the colleagues. You may remember Peter Meyer's industry maps, where we described in a great level of detail how end-to-end processes work, and also where partners have extended these things. So that is, these are the processes. The third solution is S/4HANA Public Cloud. And as we are running out of time already, but that was expected, if you have both of us in a call, then this is what always happens. S/4HANA Public Cloud. I get a lot of questions. Well, you have Public Cloud ByDesign, you have Public Cloud S/4HANA. Why on earth two solutions and not one? And again, because I meet companies with different buying preferences. If I'm talking to, let's call it a grown-up company, pretty often they have already certain elements in place. Whether I like it or not, they may have Salesforce as a CRM system. Whether I like it or not, they may have Workday as an HCM solution already in place. And they say, Rainer, lucky you, we are considering SAP to provide us with the core financial system and the core logistical solution, and maybe something else too. So what these companies are looking for is clearly a best of breed approach. And they don't want to hear from me what I consider best of breed. The only thing they want to hear from me is that my solution is so open that they can integrate with each and every other solution. In return, they know that this comes at a certain price. Integration is always a challenge, but that is the model that they like. So the companies to the right, they need the multi-component suite. That is the key thing that they want to have, and they expect it to be super open. In return, what they get from us are deep business processes, process variations. The system is built for heterogeneous organizational setups, deep industry capabilities, and the customer has an in-house experience, an in-house competency center. That is the typical S/4HANA customer. And we find, by the way, more and more of these customers also in the mid-market. So also there we see change. And then there are the others who say, Rainer, this sounds amazing, but I have not the faintest clue what you're talking about. I want a solution that has to work end to end for me, with one user experience, one analytical system, and I'm buying SAP to get out of this integration trap, because I know that integration is expensive. Therefore, on the left, I position ByDesign. On the right, I position S/4HANA Public Cloud. And if some of my colleagues then say, can't you make it a bit simpler? Then my answer is no, you need to switch on your brain.
No, I mean, and I'm glad you're explaining this, because I don't think I've ever seen from SAP the kind of differentiation you've presented for the last 20 minutes. Thank you.
Well, and this is a joint piece of work between me and my friend Uwe Grigoleit, who is in charge of S4 solution management. So we are using exactly the same slide. Just one last word. You may see that I've drawn the blue part to the very left. This might be a small pharmaceutical company who says, I need recipe management. I don't have recipe management in ByDesign. Okay. Or flow manufacturing. I don't have that in ByDesign. So even for a small company, S4 may be the right solution.
I'm sure there's other functionalities in S4, depending on vertical.
And therefore, my story is we need both ByDesign and S4. Obviously, as S4 is getting simpler end-to-end configurability and these things.
From a pricing perspective, if it was the same number of users, same size company, is S/4HANA quite a bit more expensive? Would that be a different?
No.
Okay, you rationalize.
I don't want it. Or I don't want companies to decide on user price. I want everybody to switch on their brains and do it. Obviously, an S4 system comes at a higher price point than a ByDesign system. But it is not. Let's say if you need 20 users, then yes, the ByDesign system is cheaper. If you need 100 users, the price difference is not what makes or breaks the deal. And the other observation is customers don't outgrow ByDesign by the number of users or by the number of transactions. I have customers with thousands of users on a single ByDesign tenant. If they outgrow, then they outgrow in the area of business processes or the best of breed approach.
Yeah.
So if somebody says, I need full-blown export control, go S4. If I need full-blown pharmaceutical, life science, including manufacturing, go S4. If somebody is a larger consulting firm and all of the business processes that they need, go ByDesign. If they say, I'm the same consulting firm, but I already have Workday, go S4. So it's relatively simple, and I think it's easy to understand. Yeah, but it needs to be properly communicated. Good, last slide. I thought about what I hear from my customers. The B1 customers, for many of them, it's the first ERP solution that they get their hands around, and it's their backbone for growth. Therefore, the value in B1 specifically comes from the B1 ecosystem. And my B1 partners are super good in taking the customer by the hand and taking them on a digital transformation journey. And they start with simple things like financials. and then they branch out to document management or to a CRM system. So these companies really need a partner by their side to do the digital transformation. And that's the key value that the Business One partners, or that all of the SAP partners, are providing. The ByDesign customers are typically a bit more grown up, and they want, they probably even already have an ERP history. And what they really are up for is consume enterprise resource planning as a commodity. They don't want IT geeks in their organization. They want to focus on their business. Many companies find it difficult to find staff these days. And their willingness to invest staff in IT in my market segment is close to zero. They want more salespeople. They want more people for their production. They want more people who are generating customer value. So that is key for them. When I talk to my customers who are live for many years, and I ask them, so what did it give you? And then I hear typically three things. Number one, we run a compliant business. An American customer said, well, it helped to keep our CEO out of jail. So that's a statement. If you run the system properly, you can really ensure a compliant business. The system will help you to detect fraud. The system will be very clear where a 4I principle is absolutely mandatory. And the system will also tell you, hey, you can't assign, or you should not assign, the right to pay a supplier invoice and to maintain the supplier's master data with the same person. In a very small company, they would say, but that's exactly the job of that person. Okay, then you document, yes, I know that this is potentially a violation, but I've put other instruments in place. The second thing is, the vast majority of my customers tell me that they say, hey, we managed to decouple revenue growth from IT expenses. Traditionally, IT expenses.
That's a great point. Yep.
And the last point is, they say, finally, we see that our decision quality improves. And mostly because we stick all relevant analytical information right on the screen, so that when you enter an order, you see the margin of the order. A customer told me recently, just the fact that you can't enter an order in ByDesign where you lose money, paid for the entire implementation. He said after they loaded that historic data, and he just rechecked what was the margin per order, he said he was in shock.
Why are you planning something similar real time with carbon data?
Thanks very much for asking. Yes, we will have the first version out now in November. It's called Business Ecology Management. So this solution, it is not a part of ByDesign. I built it intentionally on SAP's business technology platform, because I wanted to build it in a back-end agnostic way. So you can use it with a ByDesign, with a Business One. And if a NetSuite partner would be interested to interface it with NetSuite, I would also be interested in that discussion. The system reads the manufacturing data from ByDesign. You add to it the meter reading for the energy consumption. So how much gas, how much water, how much electric power, how much coal whatsoever. And the system calculates then per production step and for each product the carbon footprint, so that you can either disclose that data to your customer, or you buy sufficient pollution rights that you can say, I provide you this good or this service carbon free.
But you're sticking to the manufacturing side. How about other carbon travel, stuff like that? Is
So
that on the line?
we are, let's not fool ourselves. Despite the fact that we are just having the climate conference in Glasgow right now, we are in the early days. As much as I believe that this is a super important topic, I'm not blind. This is only a topic at the moment in those countries where carbon taxation is already in place and the carbon price is high. So the wave will start in Northern Europe, but it will run around the globe without any doubt.
Hell, it may not run around the globe till 2060 or 70 if China and India had their way.
Well, yeah, but I'm a bit optimistic because I've seen China doing things faster than anybody else, and obviously I would have liked to see a stronger commitment right now, but yeah, let's wait and see. My contribution is that I provide such a solution to the market so that companies can document what the footprint is, but much more importantly, they can see precisely which factor influences the carbon footprint. Maybe they need to swap out their forwarder. Maybe they need to switch from coal to gas. Maybe they need to switch from gas to electric power. And here they can see it on a screen and could say, if I would substitute here something, what would be the impact on my total carbon footprint? Yeah, and last point for all of my customers, it's super important to know that they can't outgrow the SAP portfolio. If you reach the limits of B1, be my guest on ByDesign. If you outgrow ByDesign because now you need business processes that you didn't need at the point in time when you decided for ByDesign, I provide the tooling to transition to S/4HANA. So that is also something which is important for many of my customers, that they say, okay, you have a growth path, I can stay within the SAP family, and I'm recommending, and the vast majority of my customers at one point in time want extensions with own logic. And there I recommend to really implement this logic on SAP's business technology platform, because if you then transition from solution 1 to solution 2 to solution 3, what makes this transitioning really difficult is if you have a lot of custom code. Therefore, my recommendation is keep the custom code outside of your ERP core. Build it in a side-by-side manner, again, with clear service definition in between, documented properly. But then, should you outgrow the solution, you don't need to replace the add-ons. So, Vinnie, that would be roughly it as a short introduction to the portfolio.
Like I said, this is excellent. I mean, you've positioned the three products, very well.